This time I started working on the electrical side and I found so much garbage in this car from previous installations of so many different things. But taking everything out, I did find one thing I want to mention. Behind the driver's seat is this cavity, and this cavity has this little bit of card which sits snugly in place. Now if that's not sitting in there, you'll get that petrol kind of smell in the car. So try and find that, or make sure it's taped in place and see if it goes away. The modified alternator has a cable that runs through underneath here and then under the seat and then somewhere inside there, probably the fuse box. And I had a look at the cable, and the cable has a nice big slash in it, so that's good news.
Not really making much of a contact. So there's a lot of disconnected and just spliced wires, as you can see here. So I've just worked out where they all go, but I have no idea how this car was running properly. Those things just unplugged everywhere. Fuse box sorted out, and I've also changed it all back to original style fuses and changed all the fuses to the correct amperage as well, because they were all completely wrong.
The Series 1 light is actually quite hard to come by, so whatever you have is probably the best you can find. So I've had this one before, and the one that came with the car is quite damaged, so I'm going to restore both of these to the best I can, just with a bit of polish and elbow grease. After polishing it, the internals are not too bad as well. They're nice and shiny, so compared to the old one, it's pretty good. I've done a treatment on all the nuts and bolts to get rid of the rust, and they came out really well, so I've managed to salvage all the right bits to put it back to original. I've cleaned up the rubber boot and just gone through the connectors, and the connectors in here are quite corroded, so I'm just going to clean them all back. Now just a quick light sand, an electronic solvent, some electro lube just covers it up so it doesn't get any corrosion in the future. Push that little pin back so it will clip back in the hole like this. Yes, I know these are not LEDs. I prefer the look of the older bulbs, and I just think they look a bit nicer on the car. It's taken quite a few donor parts to make two good lights. All the nuts and bolts are correct, and they have no rust in them, so we're good to put back in the car. To get the indicator in and out, you're going to find it a lot easier just to take out the light pod like I have here, because you can put your hand all the way through. I'm going to keep the traditional round Corello headlamp, but I am going to upgrade it to a LED light with a heatsink at the back. I can't put a boot on this because the heatsink would be covered, but it does fit quite snugly in there, so I'm hoping it doesn't get wet, and if it does, well, I'll just change it. I polished up the ring, came out quite well, and I powder coated the bezel so it has a nice black finish to it. The side indicator holders have these two little lugs, and those two little lugs fit in the back with this little bit of rubber and this little clip on the back here. So if you're going to take yours off or you're going to put one on, take care because you'll break those little plastic knobby bits. These two indicators are slightly different. You notice the one on the right has a silver ring around it. That's for a Series 1. The other is everything else. And those two little bits of plastic that sit in front of the light pod. I'll be installing these Corello headlamps, and these headlamps will have LEDs in them so I can lower the wattage and take the load off the wiring. All the Series 1s came with pre-wired fog lamps. They're that yellow and black cable you'll find in each light pod. I'm going to use some recycled parts of this original wiring loom, so everything should match up to factory specifications. In case you're wondering, the fog lamp switch wires are located here. As I'm working my way through the car, if I come across any terminals, I'll tidy them up as well. If you notice, this X1 line has two water nozzles. Usually there's only one in the middle, so this is probably part of the original repair. They put two in place. Unfortunately, the connector is broken off, so I'm going to have to replace these anyway. I'm hoping to find some original ones to replace it with. I'm taking out the wiper system because it gives me better access to the water nozzles, plus I get to lubricate everything up, and there's a problem with the wiper motor as well. I've pulled apart this wiper motor because when the wiper moves back and forth, if you put the stalk back to the top, it just stops anywhere, so it doesn't return back to home, and that's because this little strip here is not making contact. Just get a little bit of sandpaper and just sand in between those two contact points, and it'll fix your problem. You can see that little gear lever there that pushes back up on that, so when it goes back to that position it stops the power. And lastly, I did the wiper modification. This modification gives larger gauge wires to the wiper motor, so you get more current to flow, and the other cable goes back for the relay. Next time in part 5, I'm going to start looking at the engine.
Except for, as we start to turn the piston rings, we have found a cracked piston. Look at the crack.
Want some crack?